going to get started. So this is about detoxification and cleansing. And those of you that don't know, I have a level 6 diploma in nutrition. I think it's an American diploma that is roughly that level. And then I have also studied at the Integrative Pelvic Health Institute and the Integrative Women's Health Institute. So I did a lot of evidence-based nutrition, specifically for women's health issues, and I also do fertility massage, reflexology, and teach women to chart their cycles, both to avoid or achieve pregnancy and also for health reasons. And one of the questions that's come up a lot recently is about detoxification and cleansing, and you probably all saw throughout January loads of people were like, hey, I'm on the detox, or I'm having a cleanse, especially those in LA and in the wellness world. Everyone was cleansing at some point, and I'm not even sure they knew what the words meant, which makes me laugh a little bit. But I thought it would be really good to do a bit of clarification on what cleansing is, what detoxification is, and also I'm going to talk to you about the relationship with estrogen dominance and endometriosis, because next month is Endometriosis Awareness Month. And a lot of women do have estrogen dominance and don't realise. And then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the cleanse that I'm going to be running in March. So, moving on. Ooh, I managed to create a new slide. That's quite impressive. Okay, so what is detoxing? So detoxing technically is the removal of toxins from your system, and toxins do something to the enzymes in your body, and the enzymes are responsible for different chemical, biochemical processes. So the getting rid of toxins, and some people include getting rid of waste products in that as well. So it's quite a broad definition depending on how big you want that scope to be. So we could say that breathing is a form of detox because we're getting rid of carbon dioxide. We could say that just the cardiovascular system is a form of detox because it's removing waste from the cells in our body. More specifically, though, I consider things such as the liver, the large intestine, the bladder, the skin, and the womb to be major detox organs. But as you've probably guessed from the fact that I said, it includes breathing and the cardiovascular system, we do detox all the time. But different things affect our ability to remove all these toxins from our body, which I'm going to talk about in a little while. So it's a good idea to sort of have a good understanding of what can affect your ability to detox and what we can do to help our bodies detox. And I'm going to talk about the different types of detoxing and cleansing. So which organs need detoxing? Well, the answer is all of them. What's really fascinating is when we're asleep, our brain actually sort of shrinks and expands so that it's nourished in the CSF, which is the cerebral spinal fluid. And there's evidence that shows that that kind of bathes the brain and actually cleans the brain when you're asleep. So when people talk about fluidity and energy moving in the brain, they're actually not that far off. Every single cell in our body needs the ability to get rid of all the waste substance as well. So every single organ needs to be able to detox, and we need to do our best to support that if we want to be at our healthiest. So I said the main detox organs are the liver, the large intestine, the bladder, the skin, and the womb. I'm just going to go through those. So the liver is our main organ of detox. This is the one that everyone's heard of. So alcoholics, they have issues with detox through the liver because the liver is constantly trying to break down the alcohol. And people who consume large amounts of alcohol and large amounts of sugar, the liver can't deal with everything in one hit, so it then just stores it in various different fatty deposits, and that's where you get alcoholic fatty liver disease and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So your liver is an amazing organ. It can regenerate. It does over 300 different processes. It's responsible for so many things around the body. But when it has to get rid of toxins such as alcohol, it struggles because it has to then get rid of the alcohol first, and everything else falls down by the wayside. So we really need to support our liver in its job. And the liver actually has two phases of detox. The first one is it breaks everything down into things called free radicals, which you may have heard in beauty products. They fight free radicals, which cause aging. Free radicals cause something called oxidative stress around the body. I'm not going to go too sciencey today, but I will use a few words to try and cater for everyone's needs. So free radicals will be flowing around the body and they cause damage. For those of you that know anything about cholesterol, cholesterol plugs up that damage caused by free radicals. So actually cutting back on cholesterol doesn't reduce cholesterol. Cutting back on the damage and what causes free radicals is what reduces your cholesterol. But that's sort of to the side. Phase 2 takes these free radicals and binds them and then excretes them. So this is where the large intestine and the bladder come in. So the large intestine, you need your poop to be moving. Otherwise, you're not actually excreting everything, and certain hormones get reabsorbed if you don't poop them out quick enough. And the same with the bladder. The kidneys and the bladder get rid of water-soluble toxins. And again, sometimes you can reabsorb them. It's not as much as with the large intestine. People who have a backed up large intestine and liver, their body will try and excrete things in other ways. So the main place you'll see this after that is the skin. So there are different types of acne. You actually got different face maps mapping acne on different parts of the face and different parts of the body, and the link with various different toxins or hormones that are building up in the body. It's really quite fascinating. So the skin will try its best to get rid of things. And in really extreme circumstances, I've seen the womb try and detoxify. So this is getting a bit TMI. If you're a bit squeamish about talking about periods, this is your warning. So a number of years ago, I was on lots of different types of the pill, including the Marina coil as well. And when I started on that one, my bleed came out really dark, icky, thick and black for the whole period. And it didn't resemble a bleed at all. And then another pill I went on after that, I had the same thing. I later found out that this is a sign that my body couldn't get rid of the excess estrogen. So it was coming out in the lining. My body was doing everything it could to get rid of it. And obviously working in the area I work in, I ask women what their bleeds are like. And a lot of women have this dark, icky bleed, usually when they're on hormonal medication. It's usually particular ones that set it off. So Dianet is quite a common one for that kind of dark, sticky stuff. Another time I've seen this happen is with women who are really, really, really sick. So we're talking about extreme pneumonia, and I've come across several women say that their period has come out almost greenish, and it's really the body is trying its best to get rid of things wherever it can, and it knows that you're going to shed the lining, so it gets rid of what it can there because it knows it's going to come out. So it's really fascinating how that works, and it's quite interesting when you think about the implications of that, because if you're trying to get pregnant or you are pregnant and you're so backed up that your body is going to try and get rid of things in your endometrium and your baby hasn't yet grown a placenta, it's not going to get the nourishing nutrients that it needs through that endometrial lining. So it's got quite a lot of implications. But as I said, seeing things detox through the womb is quite unusual, and I don't see it that often, but it's one to really bear in mind. It's the most extreme end of things. So why should you detox? I like to think of this as a bucket. We all have our own bucket. Everyone is as different on the inside biochemically as they are on the outside. So we all react to different things in different ways. And we can all cope with different amounts of different things. So some people are really, really sensitive to certain foods. Some people are really sensitive to certain household cleaners. Some people are super sensitive to mycotoxins, which are molds. So if you ever get like a flood, or even mold on things such as coffee beans when you make coffee. So bulletproof coffee, for example, doesn't have mycotoxins on it. Certain beans, certain grains, all these different things, and we're going to cover quite a lot of them in a minute. All these different things, some people are more sensitive to, and some people are less sensitive to. And we also have this bucket of what our bodies are able to detox easily. And that bucket can get more full depending on the various different things that your body is trying to clean out. So, people who live, for example, in a polluted area, they're eating really, really processed foods with hardly any nutrients. They're drinking a lot. They've got a lot of scented candles, for example, around the house. And if they struggle to detox any of those, their bucket space of what they're able to detox is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. Someone else, they might be fine most of the time, but they have one particular sensitivity, and that could take up all their buckets. So it's really, really individualized. But what I've noticed is when you start to go on a detox in bunny ears or a cleanse, you're adding more nutrients into your body is able to detox more. You start clearing down that bucket and emptying it out, and things such as food sensitivities start to reduce. So things that can cause this bucket to get filled up, we've got food-like substances. So if you go into a supermarket, for example, very little of what you're looking at around you is actually food. So you've got fruit and vegetables, they're foods, your body will recognize them as foods. Meat, your body can cope with meat and knows what it is. Dairy, well, you're starting to get into the more processed things. So some people, their bodies can cope with dairy, other people, their bodies can't. Beans, grains, well, some people can cope with beans and grains and some people can't. Once we start looking past all the actual food, you start seeing everything in packets. And if you think about it, anything in a packet that doesn't break down on the shelf and has a long shelf life, your body is going to struggle to break down. And if you think of your colon being the very end of the process, so that should be the compost heap, and you think what happens on a compost heap, the two are very similar. If something isn't breaking down easily by the time it gets to the end, and I'm not talking about vegetables that still come out whole the other end, I'm talking about foods that are designed not to break down properly, your body isn't recognizing them as nutrition, and that can cause a big slowdown. Other things such as cleaners, household cleaners containing things like limonene, which convert into aldehydes, such as formaldehyde around the house, they can cause issues. Environmental toxins, so it might be pollution from cars. There was a really interesting case I read about which turned out to be the spray on raspberry fields near someone's house. And this doctor couldn't work out why everyone on the street they didn't have anything that could be diagnosed, but he noticed by fluke that they all had the same symptoms when one of them rang up about something, and he realized that they had the same symptoms, but he couldn't quite work out what was going on with someone else that he'd just spoken to, and noticed that their addresses were the same, and then started pulling out all the other patient records and noticed that they all had the same symptoms. And then when he actually went by, he realized that it was a raspberry field being sprayed all the time, and their symptoms flared up every time the field got sprayed, which was really, really fascinating. So all these different things in the environment can have an effect on us. Food sensitivity. So if you don't have a proper allergy, such as anaphylaxis, but a sort of milder allergy, that can cause issues. So that's another reason you should try and look at detoxing. Foods that don't have enough nutrients. So I said about real food, all the foods such as chocolate bars and biscuits, you think they're energy dense, but they don't have any nutrients. They're slowly clogging up that bucket too. And even if you are eating real foods such as vegetables, our soils are so depleted at the moment with modern farming methods but you have to eat a lot more vegetables to get the same number of nutrients. So ideally, you're looking between 7 portions of vegetables and 3 portions of fruit a day to 10 portions of vegetables and 5 portions of fruit a day, just to get the same as what someone else may have needed 5 a day 50 years ago, because our soils are so depleted. If you have high amounts of body fat, fat holds a lot of fat-soluble toxins in it. So your body starts storing things that it can't deal with in the fat. It can also obviously help your liver to detox, because your liver is the one doing most of the work. And finally, if you come off the pill, when you're on the pill, all your vitamins and minerals are being depleted at quite a heavy rate. So B vitamins, C vitamins, nearly every mineral is severely depleted. And I always recommend people that come off the pill get a blood test from the doctor for as many things as possible to see how depleted they are. Because if you're coming off the pill to get pregnant, yes, some women have problems getting pregnant afterwards. But if you do get pregnant and you've got those depleted reserves, you may not have the healthiest baby possible, but also your baby is going to take all your reserves from you, and you may not be strong enough or healthy enough to carry the pregnancy right through. So all these are reasons to detox, because you want to increase the space in that bucket. I'm just going to stop and have a look to see if there's any questions at all. There is a slight delay from when I speak to when you hear me, so I'm going to just talk for a few minutes just to see if there are any questions before I move on. Okay, I don't think I've got any, so I'm just going to continue through. So, issues with detoxing. Your liver is always going to prioritize the most poisonous substance first. So if you're drinking alcohol, your body is going to get rid of that first because it recognizes it as the most poisonous. It will go through everything in that order, and if it can't deal with something at that time, it will store it in fat, either in the liver or in fatty tissues throughout the body. So that's a huge issue with detox. Another issue with detox is if you're constipated or you're not drinking enough water. So you need to make sure that you're going to the toilet regularly, because if you're not, your body starts reabsorbing everything from the feces and the fecal matter that's trying to push out as it's coming out, because it's just sat there. And if you think about the compost heap again, it gets more sort of runny and liquidy, and that gets more absorbed back in through the body that way. And the same if you're not drinking enough water to help flush out your kidneys, you can start reabsorbing things there. But something else you may have heard of is the MTHFR gene, and I could talk about this for a few hours, but I'm not going to. But I'm just going to cover it very vaguely. So SNP, single nucleotide polymorphism, that's the gene SNP. Some people have this mutation called the MTHFR mutation. There's a number of variants on it. You can have heterozygous, homozygous, and there's all sorts of things. If you want to know whether you do have it or not, there's a genetic test you can do at 23andme.com. But essentially, this means that people are unable to methylate. So they're unable to convert things like folic acid, which is vitamin B9, into folate, which is the active form in your body. And because they're not able to do that, their body cannot detox properly, and it slows down the phase 2. So that's the taking the free radicals, packaging them up, and sending it out the body again. So you get this backlog of phase 1. So there are a number of things that can cause issues with your body's ability to detox. So next we're going to look at the different types of detoxes that people can do. Let's move. Okay. So there is a whole spectrum of detoxing. So you've got cleansing at one end and the master cleanse at the other. So cleansing is what most people call a detox. It's when you get rid of all the processed food, you get rid of alcohol, you get rid of caffeine, you come off the cigarettes, you come off any kind of supplement that you don't think you need, and you try and eat more nourishing food. So more real food, less processed food. So that's a cleanse. Obviously, you can have a massive degree of different cleanses, from really strictly clean food to I'm just not drinking alcohol. The next kind of level is a smoothie detox. So a lot of people like to give their digestive system a rest, and they can cope with a high number of nutrients because they already eat a relatively clean diet as it is, and they want to give themselves an extra boost, so they will have a smoothie type detox, or they might go on to the juicing detox. And the suitability for which you may find, I don't recommend juicing detoxes because most women tend to be slightly insulin resistant or highly insulin resistant. When you drink a juice, you don't have any fiber with that, and the fiber does something pretty amazing. So when you eat a whole piece of fruit, if you chew it properly, the fiber will coat the inside of the gut, which slows down the absorption of sugar. This means that your liver has time to break it down. If you don't do that, you get a huge hit of sugar into the liver, and it has to store it in the fat. And the more juices you drink, especially if they're fruity juices rather than green juices or vegetable juices or ones with protein powders in, the more your liver has to do that to catch up. With smoothies, you obviously have the fiber in there, so you don't get the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease that you get in the juices. Also, women who are insulin sensitive, or very insulin insensitive, I should say, so that they're having issues with it, or sugar sensitive, the tiniest amount of sugar without the fiber to slow it down can cause a high insulin response, and it can make insulin resistance worse. That's why with most women I recommend smoothies over juices. And then finally, we've got the master cleanse. This is someone who has a pretty clean body as it is, and as a result, their food intolerances are a lot less, their insulin levels are good, their sugar levels are good, their hormones are in a good place, their thyroid's in a good place. And this is where you hear of water fasts, or there's a lemonade type cleanse, which is homemade lemonade, which is water, sugar, lemon, honey, paprika, and that's all you drink for a few days. And you can only do them for a few days. So I've got this arrow in here because there is the spectrum. And if you don't detox regularly, or you regularly eat things that are probably clogging up your liver, or you're exposed to a lot of things that are clogging up your liver, just a cleanse is going to make a huge difference for you. Going on to anything such as a smoothie or a juice-based cleanse is going to cause massive side effects. Your body probably won't be able to cope with it. So you want to stick to what level you can cope with. So if you've never done a detox or a cleanse before, you start off with the cleansing. And if you've done that for a while and you start feeling good, and all your levels, if you're getting your hormones measured or anything like that, are back in a good place, or your blood sugar levels are stable, and you've got good insulin sensitivity, you can look at smoothies and even green juice cleanses. And if you're regularly doing smoothies and green juice cleanses and your body can cope with that fine, and it's in a really good place, then yes, you will be strong enough to do a master cleanse. Most people I know do not need to do the master cleanse. Okay, I've just had a quick look to see if there are any questions, and I can't see any. I'm going to move on. So, detoxing whilst actively trying to conceive or pregnant. This is a huge no. The reason is because when you detox, if you've got anything stored in your fat, you tend to lose weight. The fat will then obviously start dissolving, is not quite the right word, but it's the best way to think of it. As it breaks down, it releases all these toxins into your bloodstream and straight into the baby. So it's a massive no-no for detoxing whilst pregnant. Cleansing, if you're just cutting out all the rubbish, for most women should be absolutely fine, but actively going into detox where you're forcing the speed up of the liver, especially if you're taking specific detox supplements, is a big no. The other thing as well, if you're breastfeeding, you tend to detox into fats that you're getting rid of. So you detox into the breast milk and you're feeding that to your baby. So if you're breastfeeding, it's worth being super aware of any kind of environmental toxin around you that you can get rid of. So let's have a look at the side effects. A lot of people, when they eat a nutrient-dense diet, especially if you go vegan for a week or so, you start to feel amazing because you're suddenly giving your body a lot of nutrients that it didn't have before. After this kind of magical time, if you have a clogged up body, your liver's struggling, your gut has been struggling for a while, all these toxins start to be released and then you start feeling a bit rubbish. And it's really important to be aware of this because if you're aware of it, you can kind of warn your family and your friends that you're going to be tired, grouchy, and that you need that bit of support to get through it. But it's usually a sign that your body is starting to break things down and get rid of it. And then as your body is clearing these toxins through, you start feeling a bit better again. But when you are detoxing, you can feel tired, grouchy, lightheaded, dizzy. You can get withdrawal symptoms, especially to caffeine and alcohol. Cravings can pop up that you weren't aware of, so you might crave salt or carby foods or sugars. The really interesting thing about when you crave sugary foods like ice cream, for example, some of you may have heard of the microbiome, and that is to do with your bacteria in your body. And actually, we're only about 1/10 of human cells and 90% bacteria. So if you think about it, we're bacterial clouds with a little bit of human in. It's quite mind-boggling to think about because obviously when you look at someone, you see a person. Inside your gut, you have something called the microbiome, which is the genes, and the microbiota, which are the actual bacteria. When you feed certain bacteria, those bacteria obviously multiply and thrive, and they want you to eat more things that feed them. And you have the enteric nervous system, which is all the way around your gut. In fact, you have enough grey matter there, I think, to compare to a cat's brain if you were to stick it all together. And these bacteria do interact and send signals to that nervous system. So when you get a craving for ice cream in the middle of the night because you think you're going to die without it, and it can honestly feel like that when you have a craving, it's actually your gut bacteria saying, we need this sugar or we're going to die, sending that craving. It's really, really fascinating. If you're interested in cravings, I can recommend Alex Jameson's website, and she's also got the Cravecast podcast too. And she looks at all the different cravings. But when you're getting rid of all these bad bacteria that cause things like thrush, and those are the bacteria that are fed with sugar, etc., you will get these sort of cravings where you just have to have something really sweet and sugary. And it's because those bacteria are telling you to feed them or they will die. And finally, when you get through all that, you do tend to feel a lot more lighter, more energized, and a lot better. But a lot of people do go through one or two of the other symptoms first, and it's really important that when you're detoxing and cleansing that you're doing it with someone who's qualified to recognize these signs and talk you through it. So the sign of a really good cleanse. First of all, it's not so terrible that you never want to do it again. If you overly restrict on calories, for example, it's quite painful. Your body doesn't like it and it won't allow you to try that again. Even if you lost absolutely loads of weight, it won't want you to feel that miserable again. If you're overly restricting on foods, so say for example, you're only eating, I've heard of mono cleanses, which involves eating only eggs or only apples, your body isn't ever going to want to do it again. That's not a good thing. And also you're cutting out all these other nutrients. A good cleanse will also not involve supplements. So I had someone once trying to convince me to buy this. It was an aloe vera based cleanse. The aloe vera had soy in it. It had all sorts of flavorings and colorings in it. So all these things are things that will back up the liver. So I don't understand how it could possibly cleanse. Soy also contains glyphosate, which is a massive endocrine disruptor. That means that it causes problems with your hormones, and glyphosate particularly acts as a xenoestrogen, as in it makes your body think that you've got a lot more estrogen, so you get a lot more estrogen dominant type conditions such as heavy periods, period pains, fibrocystic breasts, fibroids, endometriosis, all these things, PMS, irritability, anger. All these things are when you have estrogen dominance, which can be caused by too many estrogens and xenoestrogens. And most soys, if they contain glyphosate, because they're not organic, which is about 90% of the world's soy, you're going to be taking in those xenoestrogens. A good cleanse is also nutrient dense, so it's not a case of you eat some kind of meal replacement and that's it, woohoo. You're eating lots of foods with those nutrients in, and because the foods are in the correct form, your body can actually access those nutrients really easily. Foods that are fortified with things such as folic acid, if you can't methylate, which I touched on earlier, your body isn't going to be able to do anything with that folic acid, and it actually builds up and becomes a bit toxic. So you want something that's genuinely nutrient dense with real nutrients. And finally, it's devised by a qualified professional and has guidance included. So I've seen a lot of cleanses advertised where they say, oh, it's absolutely fine to do this whilst pregnant, trying to conceive, breastfeeding, and it even contains supplements that the World Health Organization say you should never ever take whilst pregnant. They're obviously trying to sell something and make money, as well intended as they may be your friends or whatever, but look at the evidence behind it. Would a nutritionist recommend it? Yes or no? And that's a really good starting point. So I'm just going to touch on estrogen dominance a bit more before I go into the last slide. Estrogen dominance is where your estrogen compared to your progesterone is too high. So it could be that your estrogen level is low and your progesterone level is even lower. It could be that your estrogen level is normal, but your progesterone level is too low. And it can be that your progesterone level is right, but your estrogen is too high. And that causes all the symptoms I mentioned earlier. So bloating, heavy periods, intramenstrual bleeds, dark, icky stuff in the bleed, menstrual migraines, painful breasts, swollen breasts, fibrocystic breasts, endometriosis, fibroids, tendencies towards breast cancer if it runs in the family. All these are estrogen sensitive conditions, and that's caused by too much estrogen in the body. And having just a good, sensible food-based cleanse can really, really, really help with all those symptoms, because estrogen should be used once and then it should be broken down by the liver and excreted. And many women, especially if they're not having regular bowel movements, will break it down, excrete it, reabsorb it in the bowel, and then it gets round and round in a circle and you get too much for your body to do anything with. And then you get all these symptoms. So that's estrogen dominance, and it's really common with endometriosis. Endometriosis is really quite complicated and it does have other things involved as well. But most women I come across tend to have some form of estrogen dominance. It's so, so common. And if you think about all of the xenoestrogens, as I mentioned, soy, but you've also got plastics, any kind of fragrance. Even if something says it's BPA free, it just means it usually has a different BPA in it, so it's still a xenoestrogen. All these things can have this estrogenic effect, and they've even started finding frogs in streams where glyphosate has run in the rainfall, and these male frogs have testes full of eggs, which is really quite painful for them. They've got fish that are mutating due to being both male and female at the same time, and they should be one, and they can turn from female into male, although not back the other way. So it's really, really quite worrying how much this has an effect on us. And also, most people are now drinking estrogen through the water because water supply is recycled, and a lot of the women, about 50% of the reproductive population is on the pill, so they're excreting estrogen or an estrogen-like substance, which most of us are drinking in again. So lots of men are starting to get that estrogen-like fat around the middle and men boobs. So it's a huge, huge issue, and cleansing can really, really help with that. So if you're interested, I'm going to be running a cleanse program in March. It's the first one I've tried doing online via a webinar, so it's going to be a bit experimental. It's going to be based around spring and vegetables and clean eating. I'm not going to be recommending detox supplements, but I will be recommending various detox practices, such as various different scrubbings and things that you can do at home. It will include a recipe book, a shopping list, and several webinars to offer support and a private Facebook group. If you're interested, I'm not going to do a massive sales pitch now. This will be the first version of the program, so it'll be around 50 USD, which is about £25. And I'm doing it really to get feedback, to find out how people found it and how that format works. If you're signed up for this webinar, I will send you a email with details in about it. If you're interested, there'll be a little questionnaire just to find out if it's suitable for you, because it may not be, and I certainly don't want to waste people's time on something that's not suitable for them at that point in time. But if you are interested, there will be a discount to about $30. So I'm just going to quickly look at the questions. What supplements do I mean? Okay, so you mentioned milk thistle. So that is one supplement people use to detox. There are several others as well that are particularly recommended for people with endometriosis, such as I3C, DIM, SGS, but it really depends on the individual as to which one I would recommend. And I wouldn't recommend in a group program, just try this supplement, goodbye. I tend to look at people's history and sort of talk them through which supplements might help them. If people do want to take supplements, they can, by all means, book in either with me or with someone who's qualified to talk about supplements and work out what's best for them. But yeah, milk thistle is one that can be used for detox. There are a number of others, and they all have various different sort of degrees of safety depending what point you are in your life, what else is going on, etc., etc. Does anyone have any questions at all on any part of what I said about detoxing? And I can talk about anything that I've mentioned earlier in a bit more detail, but I tried to keep it to a high level view. So I'm going to talk for a few minutes just to see if any more questions come through. And just grab a sip of water as well. I just realised that I can talk for 40 minutes straight. It's quite exciting when you've got a cold. So I'm going to give it a few more minutes for questions. If anyone doesn't know, next month is Endometriosis Awareness Month. And one of the things that I really want people to know is if you have endometriosis, and if you know anyone with endometriosis, you're not alone, and you can join my Facebook group, and there are people on there. It's called The Healthy Womb, who talk about these things. But there are other groups out there for you. There's another question coming. How long should a cleanse be for? Okay, that's a great question. So the actual proper cleanse bit, between 2 weeks and a month for a cleanse. Something more stricter tends to be for a shorter period of time. So, for example, master cleanse, maximum 2 to 3 days. However, you don't just go and start a cleanse. You start cutting out various different things very gradually, work your way into it. You do the full cleanse for a period of time, and then you may have, if you want to go on to an elimination diet, you're in a really good place to do it because you've got rid of your cravings at that point. If you want to start trying adding in other foods, you can do, and just add them in slowly. And it's a really good place to if you're not going to do a full elimination diet, if you've done a cleanse for a period of time, you start noticing sensitivities to foods a bit more. And it's usually because you were feeling so rubbish before that once you start feeling good, you start noticing when things have symptoms. And it can be really unrelated symptoms that appear, 4 or 5 days after you've eaten the food. So a lot of people don't realize that asthma and eczema can be a food allergy, and it can take a few days to appear. So that's one of the other things with the cleanse. In the program I'll be running, I will be telling people how to go into it and how to come out of it. It'll be about a month long in terms of the webinars and things. But different cleanses have different time periods. And just wondering if there are any more questions. I don't think I can see the very top few questions, so if there are any more coming in, please let me know. Just noticed someone saying, "Oh, I sound great." Thank you. As I said, I've got this odd cold. Are there any other questions coming in at all? Somebody asked me about the MTHFR variation. I may be doing a webinar on that in the future if people are interested, because you can go into quite a lot of detail. There's also Dr. Ben Lynch has a really good website on the MTHFR stuff. And if you want to know whether you've got the mutation or not, then you can do the 23andMe test, and they send it back to you, and then they've got a free website where you put the information in and it tells you what all the different genetic mutations or variants that you have, what they mean. With MTHFR, you need to interpret it. It tells you whether you've got the genes, but not whether they're switched on or off. So you need to see someone that can interpret your blood tests for you as well. It's worth mentioning. Are there any other questions at all? You can also put them in the Facebook group. Okay. I can't see any other questions. I'm going to give it another minute. If you're going to wait for the webinar the replay as well, that usually takes a few hours for YouTube to process because it automatically gets uploaded and then it goes into a queue to process. I can't affect that in any way, shape, or form, but you will probably get the replay tomorrow. If you have any questions, you can email me. It's rachel@thehealthywomb.com. I'll send out an email later. There's the Facebook group. I've got the Facebook group, The Healthy Womb, which is for just any woman that wants to talk about women's health related conditions. And I stick blog posts and things in there that I think are useful. I've also got another Facebook group for women's health practitioners if you want to know more about my practitioner level trainings. If you do, just drop me a line and I can add you into that group, and that's for people who are qualified practitioners. So I can't see any more questions. So thank you very much for joining me. I hope it's given you an overview of detoxing and cleansing and some more clarity. If you want to know any more, as I said, you can ask questions in either the Facebook group or drop me a reply to the email I'll send out a bit later. And I look forward to speaking to you soon. So have a lovely evening, everyone. Goodbye.